So I'm gonna give you an example of how to find the producers. So the producers are gonna be the ones that don't have arrows pointing at them. These animals right here have arrows pointing at them. So I'm gonna say only the seaweed, which again is a type of algae, don't have arrows pointing at them. And also the phytoplankton. If you look at it, the only arrows are going away from it. That means that organisms are getting their energy from them, but the phytoplankton, since they don't have arrows pointing at them, we know these two are producers and they're getting their energy from the sun. Now, let's find the primary. So how would we find the primary? Anybody can tell me, if you want to tell me in the chat, where would be the primary consumers? How do we find the primary consumers? So you just want to write answer and then you can unmute yourself. Sure. Go for it. Oh, can I go now? Anytime you want. Next to the plants, right? So we will count literally after the producers, we will count one place. So if you look at this, I'm going to pick red just to pick a different color. If we follow one place, that's our primary consumer. So just follow the arrows and the number one place, the number one organism right after the producers, those are your primary. Crab, zooplankton, yes, and krill as well. Now, how do we find our secondary? Anybody can tell me anybody can tell me the secondary consumers next to a primary? Yes, so give me some examples. The crab is a primary because it's right after the producer. Squid, right? So 1, 2, so 2 places after the producers. Fish, again, after the producer. There is another one in here, which a lot of people miss. Krill is a primary because it's 1 place after the producers. Now, what about the whale? A lot of people miss the whale, the blue whale. Thank you, earlier. So the blue whale is actually secondary because it's 2 places away from the producer. So if you count this, 1 and then 2. So blue whale actually only eats krill. I know it's the biggest animal that has ever existed on this planet, but it is one of the tiniest creatures on the planet. All right, and after that, we go to tertiary. We have 5 minutes. Anybody tell me tertiary? How do we find the tertiary? Anybody can tell me examples of the tertiary? No, the blue whale cannot eat much because their throat is not that wide, so they actually cannot eat. Seagull, right? So seagull is tertiary, number 3, because it's 3 places away from the phytoplankton. So if you count this, 1, 2, and then 3. Elephant seal, yes, tertiary. Yes, penguin, correct, tertiary. Very good. And then we also have the leopard seal. Now, let me tell you about this, because this is where it gets a little tricky. But what about quaternary? So quaternary means 4. I'm going to write it in chat. Quaternary is what comes after 3. Is the, anybody can tell me what are the quaternary consumers, number 4 consumers? The killer whale. Okay, and then there is another one. And I know we already covered all of them, but there's actually another quaternary consumer in here. The penguin is tertiary. Yes, Ronnie. So the leopard seal is actually a quaternary and a tertiary consumer at the same time. And that's going to happen a lot on our food chains, is that some animals in one side are going to be tertiary when they come this way, 1, 2, 3. But when they come from this side of the ecosystem, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Sometimes animals can be secondary and tertiary at the same time. Sometimes animals can be tertiary and quaternary at the same time. All right, so that's something that it's going to be confusing for some of you, but just look at the separation. There was another example in the lesson right in here, and this is the last one I'm going to say. So right in here, what is one organism that is primary and secondary at the same time? The mouse is primary. It doesn't eat producers. I mean, it eats producers, but it doesn't eat any consumers. Look at the bluebird. Yes, earlier. So the bluebird, I know you have to go right now, guys. Oh, we have 2 minutes, actually. You can stay here. So the bluebird is primary because it is a producer, but the bluebird is also secondary because it's eating the grasshopper, which is a primary consumer. So just look at this bird. It's 2 places away from the producer, but it's also 1 place away from the producer. That's why we have primary and secondary at the same time. And that's something you're gonna see in the lesson that is due today. In this little graph right here, you're gonna see this graph, which tells you that some animals are even 3 types of trophic levels at the same time. Do you see how that one is primary and secondary? Yeah, so let me just go back to that one. So remember the bluebird, I'm gonna make it in a different color. The bluebird is primary because it is a producer. So we know it's primary. That's clear to everybody. But it's also secondary. It's also a secondary consumer, but because it eats another organism right here. Okay, so it's a primary consumer, which makes it a secondary consumer as well. Anybody can tell me a different name for secondary consumer? Oh, it's omnivore. Yep. Thank you, Righty. It's an omnivore because it can eat, I would say, I'm not going to say vegetable. I'm going to say plants, okay? It's an omnivore because it can eat plant and it can also eat meat, okay? So the insect is meat, is an animal, so it's meat. So the bluebird is actually an omnivore. Just like, yep, thank you, Mr. Abdin. Omni means all, so it eats all, which is plants and animals.